Once again, welcome to St. Mark. Those of you who are here at our Pere campus, those of you joining online, it's wonderful to have you here. Which leads me to my question. Why are you here? I'm not talking about why do you live in a place that hurts your face and your nose when you walk outside. I'm not talking about sitting here in a sanctuary in a building, or probably sitting on your couch in the warmth of your own home. I'm talking philosophically, existentially. What is the purpose of your existence? That can be a very difficult question to answer if you don't have a solid worldview. Now, a person's worldview is the lens through which they experience and interpret the world around them. It could be nature, reality, the origins of the universe, and even the nature and the purpose of humanity. Now, there are some really big philosophical words to describe all those things, like epistemological and teleological, cosmological and anthropological. I'm not going to go through each and every one of those, okay? But I think I pronounced them correctly. We're really going to boil it down to 4 main questions. Where did I come from? Why am I here? How should I live? Where am I going? Those 4 questions form a person's worldview. And how you answer those 4 questions not only determines your worldview, but your worldview then in turn interprets and affects how you live. Many people have great challenges in answering those questions. People struggle with at least one of them on a regular basis. And maybe that's why you're here. Maybe you're struggling with one of those questions or more than one of those questions. And you're hoping to find some answers. Now, some people just honestly don't even think about those questions. Some don't think about them long enough to actually come up with answers. And some people will look to science and evolution for answers, and that's going to be the focus of this message. The theory of evolution and the Big Bang attempt to answer the first question. And most evolutionists might try to get to the 4th question, only because they have to incorporate the nature and purpose of humanity in the greater cosmic reality, right? But evolutionists aren't really that concerned about the 2nd and the 3rd questions, meaning and morality. Because I think most evolutionists would probably say that it's up to the individual to determine their meaning and their morality. You have to figure that out for yourselves. Personally, I don't think too many people are overly concerned with the 1st and the 4th questions. They probably don't think too often on where did everything come from or where is it all going. They might think about the future a little bit more than the origins of the universe. But I think that most people are very concerned with and think about, why am I here and how should I live? Because the questions of meaning and morality are a lot more pressing, a lot more relevant and immediate in the sense that they're in our face almost on a daily basis. And that question of why am I here, becomes pressing and relevant, especially in a world that is filled with challenges and uncertainty. Consider this quote from C.S. Lewis in his famous work, Mere Christianity. If the whole universe has no meaning, we should never have found out that it has no meaning. Just as if there were no light in the universe, and therefore no creatures with eyes, we should never know it was dark. Dark would be a word without meaning. Now again, that gets pretty philosophical, but what Lewis is saying is the fact that we are self-aware enough to even question our purpose in the universe hints at the fact and the truth that there must be a life with meaning and direction. But for many people, life seems like it has no inherent meaning and direction. They're looking for answers to the questions of why am I here and how should I live? And that lack of meaning and direction really points to the fact that there is an incredible rise in anxiety and depression and aimlessness in our society and culture. I believe that points to a secular worldview which has separated humanity from its divine creation and purpose. Last week, in the first sermon of this series, Pastor Parlow walked us through most of Genesis 1, all the way through most of day 6 of creation. And in that sermon and in Genesis 1, we see a God who created everything out of nothing. Now, science cannot explain a creation ex nihilo. That's Latin, and I'm going to use that as often as I can, but that means out of nothing. Matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed, which is probably the oversimplified version of the first law of thermodynamics. Darwin's theory of evolution does not address the origins of life, nor does it attempt to explain the formation of the universe. The Big Bang attempts to describe the formation of the universe, but doesn't attempt to explain the origins of life. So the theory of evolution relies heavily on and really depends on microevolution. Okay? That's the process of gradual, observable changes or adaptations within a species. For example, some of you might be familiar with the peppered moths of Britain. The lighter colored moths, prior to the Industrial Revolution, were able to survive a lot more easily because they blended in with the lighter bark on some of the trees. But then after pollution and after the Industrial Revolution, it was the darker colored moths that were able to survive and thrive more easily because they blended in with now the darker bark on the trees. That's an example of microevolution. Another example of microevolution is a virus. Viruses are constantly changing and mutating so that they are unaffected by certain vaccines. We can also think of the gradual increase in size of horses or the various dog breeds that have risen over the centuries. All of those are examples of microevolution. And I think even as Bible-believing Christians, Bible-believing Jesus followers, we can see that. We can agree with microevolution. But the problem comes in when people take those observations from a small scale timeline and expand them to a large scale timeline, which we call macro evolution, which states that one species can evolve and change into another completely different species. And so as that process goes over time, it's no longer just changes and adaptations for its surroundings. The new species does not relate to the first in any way, shape, or form. But if you remember Pastor Parlo's sermon, and if you've read Genesis chapter 1, you know that God created every living thing to reproduce according to its kind. Now, Darwin's theory relies on three elements: the formation of the universe, the origin of life, and the encoding of life's information. So essentially, we have to ask some really good questions. Where did life come from in the first place? Where did the ingredients for life originally come from? Because living things don't come from non-living things. And finally, where's the recipe for all of those ingredients to be put together in just the right way? Science and the scientific method cannot provide solid answers to any of those questions. Even the Big Bang Theory, which describes or attempts to describe the beginnings of the universe, doesn't explain how or why. So who or what caused that incredibly grand event? You see, evolution could never have even gotten off the ground if all of the necessary ingredients weren't present and accounted for. But to say it happened on its own by mere chance is a giant leap. It's a leap of logic, and it's a leap of faith. It's almost as if evolution is trying to rewrite Genesis 1 to say something like this: in the beginning, the stuff was already here. And the stuff rattled around, bumping into itself, and over eons of time, it ultimately got its act together. Randomly, without any cause or purpose or outside help of any kind, it arranged itself into the exact plan, the exact elements and order necessary to cause self-replicating and upwardly evolving life to suddenly leap into existence. Again, even if that were true, where did the vast amount of stuff come from? Most scientists say that all matter, not to mention time and space itself, came into existence at the Big Bang. But here's what's interesting. You can name an event, call it the Big Bang or whatever you want, without describing how or why it happened. Essentially, what's happened is people have gone from science, which is able to explain a whole lot of stuff about our universe, to scientism, which is the dangerous belief that science explains everything. Science cannot and does not explain everything. Even if we focus on those two big questions of life, meaning and morality, science cannot tell you why you're here. Science cannot tell you what's right or wrong or how to live. Can science explain a lot? Obviously. And we have wonderful, amazing, incredibly powerful brains that are able to learn and know and understand the complexity of this universe. In fact, Albert Einstein once said, the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. One should expect a chaotic world, one which cannot be grasped by the mind in any way. We are able to understand and know and observe the incredible universe that God has created in a variety of sciences, like mathematics and physics and biology and chemistry and astronomy, which takes a look at the entire universe and planetary motions and the stars and all of those amazing things. But even with all of that knowledge and all of that understanding, most evolutionists won't even venture a serious guess as to how life came about in the first place. Most scientists simply accept the fact that life is here, acknowledging that they don't know how it got here, but they're quick to say that God can't be part of the equation. Neither scientific record nor statistical chances point to the conclusion that life appeared on this planet spontaneously without the help of some kind of creative guiding force. To believe that life began by random chance is actually the definition of absurdity, not science. The complexity of even the most basic life forms, think bacteria. The complexity of a bacteria defies the odds of random chance. The vast amount of information that is contained in DNA, the blueprint for life, suggests, at the very least, a designer. And Psalm 139, verse 14, beautifully captures this, stating, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well." This recognition of divine craftsmanship in our very being speaks to a purposeful creation. And that's just for human beings. When you take into account the incredible vastness of the animal kingdom found throughout the world, all of the fish and the aquatic creatures in the sea, the birds, not to mention vegetation, and it all happening by random chance? Now, we have to admit that God is God, and we are not, and there are certain things about creation that we just simply won't be able to understand. But we have been given the gift of reason and logic and understanding to observe everything in this universe and to come up with some pretty solid conclusions. So, why are you here? Are you really some cosmic accident? Are you the result of some naturalistic miracle that defied the odds of random chance? Or are you here on purpose, with a purpose? When it comes to these discussions about creation versus evolution, we have to remember that it's not our goal to win an argument or to prove the other person wrong. It's to point someone to the love of God, to introduce them to Jesus, their Savior, and then share with them the gospel message, which as you introduce it and as you tell them more about the gospel, it actually answers all four of life's big questions. Where did I come from? Why am I here? How should I live? Where am I going? By starting with common ground, the complexity of life and the universe, we can gently guide others, maybe to just even consider the possibility of a creator. So when you look at all of the evidence of creation, the complexity of life and this universe, you are led to the conclusion that you are here for a reason. You are here, you are created to reflect God in this world as his image bearer and to live out his purpose in your life. Now, you have failed, you will fail. So have I, we all have, at living out that purpose. But through Jesus, God sees you as perfect. This is why you are here, to glorify God and to fulfill your purpose as his beloved creation.